Maria, you play beautifully, but I think there's room in something like this, particularly such an exposed solo and such a pivotal emotional moment in the piece to really kind of go for it. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Play Me an Excerpt. Today we have two fantastic musicians. We have Maria, who plays the flute from Ecuador, and then we have David, who plays the double bass from Philadelphia. Maria, play me an excerpt. Beautiful, Maria. That was really, really, really nice. I love this excerpt from Brahms 4. I played this piece for the first time a little over 20 years ago, and we took it on a tour, so I heard it a lot. But it's easily, of course, well, it's like, how can you pick a favorite Brahms symphony? It's like picking a favorite child. I think it's impossible. So with Brahms, I think one of the biggest questions that comes up with the composer Brahms is, what kind of composer is he? And what I mean by what kind of composer is, what era of time does he belong? Is he a romantic composer? I mean, surely his music is so lush and wonderful. So it's easy to think that Brahms is a romantic composer, but there are historians out there who might argue Brahms is very much a classical composer. I like to look at things in context. Brahms and the way he started, he looked at the classics to write his music. And so I think at the very least he was informed by the classics in that process. At the same time, he is visionary in that he's looking at the future, which is romanticism. So I think that's why sometimes with Brahms it's very hard to, I think it's easier for some people to call him a romantic than classical, but I understand both arguments. The reason I mention that is there are many ways to interpret his music. Because this is a fourth symphony, and because this is his last, and kind of looking in that romantic era, I use that as one guide to help me decide how I'm going to play his music. But then I look at the notes that Brahms gave me himself. How romantic am I able to be? Mr. Brahms, how romantic am I able to be? Well, let's look at what he writes. So the beginning of this movement, from the Fourth Symphony of Brahms, it's the last movement, the fourth movement, he writes a tempo marking, and that tempo marking is Allegro energico. I'm going to say this, the Italian, y'all, I'm just, So, Allegro energico e appassionato. Wait, that's some good information. Allegro energico e appassionato. So, to me, it's like an energetic allegro and passionate or with passion, which is a very specific kind of instruction from Mr. Brahms. And if you know the whole of the piece, particularly that last movement, there's a lot of kind of passion in that movement. So the flute solo in this symphony occurs after all these many variations of this theme that goes through all these iterations. And this flute solo is kind of a point of quite heavy pathos. And if you look at the score, we have this pianissimo with diminuendo. Starting so beautiful. And then in bar 96, the bar before, we should be at our quietest moment. La, sol, fa. And and then piano subito, espressivo, mi, re, mi, fa, sol. And to me, that's very, very clear. So if I were listening behind the screen, I would want to hear that change in color from the pianissimo diminuendo to the piano espressivo. So it should kind of arise out of this whole descending moment in the orchestra. And the espressivo. So what does that mean? Those who know me know I talk about appoggiaturas a lot, because to me appoggiaturas tell you so much. And honestly, with appoggiaturas in a piece like this, appoggiaturas are the point of the most pain, the most dissonance, the most grinding that then gets resolved and makes us feel better. In this, Brahms puts a ton of different appoggiaturas, some starting from the upper register, some or from one half step above, or one whole step above, and sometimes a half step below, or they all come from different angles, but it's always landing on the wrong note. And I'll demonstrate. Da, 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 dee. We're in E minor. So the F sharp is the appoggiatura that then we resolve up to the G. I would recommend leaning more on those appoggiaturas and then making sure we do that diminuendo. So in that way, I think we can get that more espressivo quality. Marie, you play beautifully, but I think there's room in something like this, particularly such an exposed solo and such a pivotal emotional moment in the piece to really kind of go for it. So you have this dee yada yadi yadi, and you notice I didn't do it directly in time. You can actually lean on the appoggiatura because it literally means lean. Dee yada yadi da 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 dee da da yada yada. There's room to do that. Now you're like, well, how's anyone going to follow you? Well, if you look at the score, the accompaniment is just these offbeat quarter notes in the strings. So da 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 dee da da dee da 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 yada da da da. So with any good chamber music, any good chamber musician will know when to play those notes. I think you have that time to be that expressive. Now, in being expressive, we don't want to do the same thing every single time, so you have to plan it out. But I think that would really, really help make this an even more appassionato and expressive solo. And I'll keep going a little bit. Da, ya, da, da, dee, ya, da, da. And you notice I'm also doing it a little bit faster. He writes this in 3/2. The movement's in 3/4, but 3/2 means the heavy beats should actually be the large beat, so 3. So it shouldn't feel like it's in 6/4. It should feel like it's in 3/2. So da 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 dee ya da 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 ya da 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 da. So you want to have that kind of feel to it versus da 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 dee da dee da dee da da. Because I think Mr. Brahms did not actually want that. Otherwise, he would have written 6/4 instead of 3/2. So again, back to the appoggiaturas with this kind of feeling in 3. Da 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 ya dee. Ya da da ya da 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 ya da. You have all that time. Da 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 ya da ya da dee dee. And taking that away. So finding moments where you can actually take the notes away and let them go up. And sometimes we're going to show direction. I love that third bar of the 3/2 because that's actually another appoggiatura that he lands. La sol la fa sol fa mi. And then he actually puts another wrong note before he resolves it. So fa re mi sol si, which is just kind of amazing. So I would really look at those opportunities because you play so beautifully. I think there's room to be a little bit more expansive to make this a little bit more of a, how can I say, a more impassioned display as well as a expressive display. Pianissimo, great diminuendo, should be getting softer, and then this piano. Yes, I like that one. D, D. Yes, that's great. So in that moment, I love how you're taking time, Maria. It's actually really, really nice. But But after you peak, make sure after you play the appoggiatura, it comes down more. So we hear this dee da da yada. I kind of hear dee da da yada. I think some of them might go up, but others come down, and you can make those decisions and make them clear so that the journey for the listener is that much more enjoyable. Let's keep going. That appoggiatura. And that more diminuendo there with this crescendo, poco. Yes, and keep even more. Yes. Good. So it's beautiful. I just wish I want to hear a little bit more of the appassionato. So it's not so rhythmic. I think you again have some room to make some wiggle room. So that's really that's one of my main things. Make sure we're diversifying the appoggiaturas so that they all don't sound the same. Which as it gets more impassioned with the crescendo, you did. I think you could do even more. And as I mentioned already, it's that the strings will follow you. So I think the main point is, Maria, you have time and space in this to really make this a moment where after so much passion, da da dee da ya dee ya, there's all, and then all these variations, and then we get to this point where it's just this one little flute playing this beautiful melody, and I think there's room to really kind of enjoy where all the orchestra's been fully lit, and then all of a sudden the spotlight is on that one singular voice. It makes it both musically profound, but I think also emotionally and humanly profound. To be kind of in this lost place, da dee da da dee, ya da da dee da dee, ya da ya da, where it's really, really kind of searching for the answer. Where how is this going to end? It might be able to end in maybe a happy place. And we know Brahms doesn't allow us to do that. Thank you so much for that, Maria. That was really beautiful. Brahms is my favorite composer, and you definitely did him justice. So we are going to move on. We're going to move to David from Philadelphia on the double bass. David, play me an excerpt. Very nice, very nice. So full disclosure, David and I know each other. David was a student of mine at Temple University, where he got his undergrad and master's. So bravo, David. It's great to hear you. Again, and I'm going to go over some housekeeping items, and then we'll dive into some nitty gritty stuff, if that's okay, if you're okay with that. Are you okay with, okay, anyway. Okay, so triplets in general, da 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 da. Two things: make sure your left hand is super secure, and make sure that your right hand allows for the note to speak underneath the slur. Sometimes I felt like you were da 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 da. I think having a little bit more legato approach to allow those notes to speak and make sure that our left hand is lining up with our right hand will make those more successful. Because sometimes it was like it became a little mumbly. Another big housekeeping item. I'm jumping around a little bit. When you do at the repeat, make sure you count. Dee da 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 da. Dee dee da dee da. If anything, you can take more time, but don't take less time. Just don't take less time. Do the right time or take a little bit more time, but don't take less time. I think that will make that more successful. All your 16ths, you play your 16ths kind of with the same idea. And two things. One is I think you can play a little bit more for me in, on, and do a slight almost elongation ever so much. And you can just practice this, and I would do it right now, except for it's really late at night. My neighbors won't like me doing the little So, but you can literally just practice on like a D natural on the G string and just go. And where are you in the bow when you do that? I mean, is that something to play that fast, this nimble? Do you want to be at the frog? Probably not. You probably want to be someplace a little, for me, where I can have my first finger connect with the bow. Probably so more towards the middle. So I can really use my finger to really get in the string and do that crescendo. So I say, for example, let's go back to the opening, for example. Da dee da dee da dee da dee da 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 dee da da. So there's always this a little bit of a energy taking us to the next bar. All your eighth notes, for me, sometimes tee ta tee ta tee, they can be a little bit more bellish or ringish. But it changes in different places. For example, I think they are jauntier at the opening. Bum, 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 bum. That's a little jaunty. But then when we get to re, do, re, si, re, la, re, sol, mi, re, do, si, do. I can't do all the solfege, but do, si, do, la, sol. Something can be a little bit more, da, 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 a little bit more to mark the harmony and really show that descending line. We can have something a little longer in concept versus and not to say that you did that, but I think you can go more in that other direction. And then I will start going now with the overall arching, the concept, the courant. For me, the heaviest dance in all the 6 dances of the cello suites, or the 5 dances in the prelude, of course. So, and I'm not saying play it heavier, because actually I think your approach generally is good, but it's more in the poise, more in the pizzazz, more in that little hint of aristocracy. So this bum 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 beep bum 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 bum. Even that, you have room. You don't have to go bum 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 beep bum beep. So 2 things about poise. One, it never rushes. For sure, it never rushes. And the other thing about poise is it's almost like you're so important that people just have to wait for you. So bum 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 bing bum 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 bum. So you can literally just having the set bum 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 bum. This kind of boisterous spirit. Then when the rubato, all the rules of rubato, we can give back some of that time, which is why there might be that falling into the cadence of the next bar. So dum bum bum bing bum 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 bee. And you notice how the low D is actually the end of the first phrase, and then the next phrase begins on the C sharp. So bum 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 bing bum 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 bee. And for the A here, you could argue, and I would actually accept it, that D is actually an elongation, because it's just an octave drop to keep the line going. Da 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 dee ya da. But he just drops down. So in which case that continues. It's not the end of a phrase, it actually keeps going. And then we talked about the triplets already. So let's I'll see if I can point any of this out as you play. Here we go. Good. So even in that opening, bum, bing, tum, pum, ta, ta, ti, ta, ti, ti. It sounds like you're in a rush, but just dum, dum, bum, bing, bum, bum. This jaunty, courant dance. I think you can afford to not have to rush right in that quickly. Let's try that again. Then more legato. Yeah. So I think one of the contrasts here, David, is you go da 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 da, and there's always this release. And I think as a contrast to the dee da 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 dee da dee ya dee da 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 da, something the line gets a little longer versus da 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 da. I think that contrast would be really, really great. And then as we continue, you'll see the all these could have that kind of energy. Good. And so this is really, really great. You're playing it well, but I think it'll be really nice to highlight some of the beautiful architecture and harmony. La, fa, la, mi, re, do, si, sol, fa, mi, la, sol, fa, si, sol, mi, la, fa, re, mi. So what you notice I was singing, I'm starting in bar 13. I was singing the second eighth note, the fourth eighth note, and the fifth eighth note. Because if you take those eighth notes, they actually kind of make their own little tune. So fa, mi, re, sol, fa, mi, la, sol, fa, si, sol, mi, la, fa, re, mi. So if we can somehow see that, you don't have to like whack it or anything, like but di, ta, da, da, di, da, da, da. And then with the upper line, la, do, si, re, do, mi, re, do, si, sol. And then you have these two different voices, la, fa, la, mi, re, do, si, sol, si, fa, mi, re, do. Gotta work on my solfege, y'all. You're really trying me, but I hope that makes sense. So there's more room to show these different voices versus playing just they sound a little bit too much to me the same. I think there's a missed opportunity in highlighting those just for color. And again, everything is subtle. I'm not saying like hit anything. I think it's important for anyone who's listening to know. When I say bring out things, it's not to hit it. It's to show it in the context of the phrase. I always say we should phrase like the Appalachians and not the Rockies. If you're from the United States, you might understand that reference. The Appalachian Mountains are an old mountain chain. They're like rolling hills. They're beautiful, 6,000, 7,000 feet tall, but they are rolling. We're like this. The Rockies are like this. This newer mountain chain. And we don't want a phrase where we just pop out. That's like Stravinsky. You can phrase where things pop out. With Bach, we want to have more of this rolling Appalachian feel when we play. Alrighty, David, and that's where we don't want to. That's where you did the extra beat. So I have a few thoughts. So generally when bass players are playing Bach, we do play it for our own wonderful pleasure and we enjoy doing that. But oftentimes this is asked of us in auditions. And with that hat on my head, I would say be really careful. If I were listening from behind the screen, one of the first things I would think about this performance that would get my attention is the quality of the notes. So making sure we have the sound quality is clear throughout. I mean, we can tell that there's a little bit of, because it's hard. I know it's hard. When we get to that little sequence at 18, so make sure we aren't. It sounds almost like you're afraid of the top note, but it's probably where you have your bow and how much we're engaging with the string. What we don't want to hear are non-notes. So this is why I was recommending in those triplets that there's a little bit more connectivity between the bow and the triplets, da da da. And honestly, I would just recommend slow work for that, da 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 dee 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 da 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 da, and make sure we're engaging the string and not just flying over the string. Because what makes for really compelling performance is when all those notes are super clear. You do a really good job, but I think there could be more clarity and almost so some of the spaces between the notes, if that makes sense, particularly in the triplets. Da 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 dee da da. Da 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 dee da 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 da, and really working on that again to contrast the jauntiness nature of the opening. So poise, 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 poise. Chord to the sound. Look for places of phrase. Da 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 da. But all beautiful stuff. Really great to hear you play again, David. Thank you, David and Maria, for playing me an excerpt. And if you would like to play me an excerpt, just go down to the description below and all the information that you need is there. Everyone, you can always follow me on my socials, Weatherclef on TikTok and on Instagram, Joseph Conyers on Facebook, Weatherclef on Twitter. And if you enjoy this video, share it with someone. Maybe they'll get something out of it. And I thank you so much for following and listening along. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, this is a great time to hit that subscribe channel. And you can even hit the alert button to know every single time I come out with a video, because it could be play me an excerpt, or it could be another excerpt, or it could be all kinds of wonderful things. You all have a great day. Take care.